Hey everybody, welcome to Small Group. I'm so excited for the conversation that you're going to have together for this session. This week we've been talking a lot about this perception of Christianity that's out there, where we're hypocrites. That's what most people think of us. They would think that we say one thing but do something entirely different. And we discussed the idea of integrity and how that's in a lot of ways the opposite of hypocrisy. But we're also in the middle of a world that defines integrity differently. And so we talked about Integrity 2.0 and how our world, the people you rub shoulders with every day, define it. And here's what's amazing about integrity now is that it's all relative. But you aren't judged on integrity being relative. You are judged on how you define integrity. So here's what's interesting about Christians. We define integrity according to an external measuring stick. Integrity 2.0 for the world has a lot to do with internal. This is where we develop our self-principles and abide by those, but we don't enforce those on anyone else. Where Christianity is different is we say, God has set up these principles by which we're supposed to live, and we live accordingly. So when we say that, but don't live accordingly, that's where the label of hypocrite comes in. So the truth is, people aren't wrong because we do it all of the time. And a lot of times it's us playing into Integrity 2.0, where we can be really churchy and really about God on Sundays, but then the rest of the days of the week, when we're at work or we're in class or we're at the PTA meeting, we can be different because we think that it's all relative, that our church understanding and belief system only applies at church. But if you and I are going to make God famous for the right reasons, and we're going to take Christians out of it and just help people know Jesus, then we have to fight this perception of hypocrisy. And it's only going to come when we become people of integrity in our own belief system. So here's what that would look like. We need to integrate our beliefs into everything. We talked about the difference between integrating the surface things. Normally we'll talk about things like, well, you need to be a Christian at work, and you need to be a Christian in your family, and you need to be a Christian in your neighborhood, not just at church. And that's good and true, but it's kind of surfacey. We talked about how we need to take our preaching principles, the things that we say all of the time, and we need to apply them to what we called practiced values. And so not just I believe this, but I believe this so I do this in my everyday. And we need to integrate our preaching into our personal interactions. How we treat people is so important. People are watching us interact with other people. And then we also need to apply our preaching to our prioritized arrangements, because oftentimes what we say is important isn't reflected on our calendar. It's not reflected on our priority list. And that makes us a hypocrite. If those things aren't a part of those different buckets in our life, we deserve that title. And so we looked at a part of the letter from Paul to the church in Philippi, where he talked about we should do all things without grumbling and complaining and become this blameless and pure church. And the church is kind of our metaphor for individuals. That Paul wants the church to be pure and full of integrity, not have divisions in and of itself. And so you and I should be the same. We should be seeking to be pure and blameless, full of integrity, so we don't live these lives that has one person in one area and we're a different person in another area. It has to apply to how we live our life. So the bottom line for the week this week has been, people will listen more to what you do than what you say. Christianity is not about being able to talk a good game. It's about being able to live a Christ-like life, a life on display, as we've called it, so that other people begin to understand who Jesus is based on you. Not who you are as a Christian, but who Jesus is. And so we ended our time together. We passed out a copy of Emmanuel's Core Beliefs and Values. And I encourage you to take those core beliefs and values and ask yourself the tough question. Do I believe this? And do I live this? Is this really what I think? Is this really what I believe? And if it is, can I say that I live this way every day? And what I encouraged you to do was sit down and maybe rewrite those in your own language, thinking about your context. And so this is what I would love for you to do in your group. Spend time discussing that. Even if it's just a discussion about how difficult that process was or how challenging it was to think, if I believe that, then I've got to do this. That's okay. It can be all about complaining and saying how difficult all of this is. But I think it would be really good to spend some time wrestling with, do we actually live out what we say we believe, or do we just talk a good game and deserve the label of hypocrite? So I hope you have a great discussion. I hope you have a great time together. And if you're eating, I hope that it's delicious. Have a great group. We'll see you next week.